And so tonight on this particular call, we're going to talk about the value of being a high performer, the value of being a high performer. How many of you would agree with me that the life that you desire is on the other side of you being a high performer in whatever field that you're in? Because most of us on the line, we're entrepreneurs or we're aspiring entrepreneurs. There's something that we're desiring to do at a high level. And that requires us, whatever that field is, it requires us to be a high performer. The high life is reserved for the high performers. So, what exactly is a high performer? A high performer, please write this down. A high performer is an individual who consistently achieves exceptional results in their chosen field through a combination of skill, commitment, and efficient action. A high performer is an individual who consistently achieves exceptional results in their chosen field through a combination of skill, commitment, and efficient action. And what I recognize about many high performers is that they're in the field that they are purposed for to some capacity. Like when you look at a person like Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Grant Cardone, Jeremy Minor, like whoever you want to name that's exceeding at a high level in their chosen field, that field that they've chose, they're in alignment to a point where they're willing to sacrifice to get really good at the skill. They're going to commit at the highest level possible, and they're going to dedicate themselves and commit themselves to efficient action. We're going to talk about what efficient action is momentarily. But again, a high performer is an individual who consistently achieves exceptional results in their chosen field. So the field that you choose, it has to be a field that you're willing to sacrifice for, that you're willing to suffer for. The movie Passion of the Christ, I used to wonder, why is it called The Passion of the Christ? And the reason why is because passion, by definition, is something that you're willing to suffer for. Something that you're willing to suffer for. So Jesus was willing to suffer for us, hence the term passion of the Christ. So skill, commitment, and efficient action, when we're talking about being a high performer, to be a high performer, to excel and achieve exceptional results in a field, it has to be a field that you're willing to suffer for, because you have to suffer to develop skill. When you talk about commitment, commitment requires suffering. Getting up before you want to get up, all the extra stuff that you got to do, going the extra mile when nobody else is going the extra mile, dedicating and committing yourself to efficient action, that's suffering for something. So you have to have passion for the thing that you want to be a high performer in. Because if you devote your time or your life to something inferior, you can never get a superior result. So whatever you're going to dedicate your life and your time to, it has to be something that, again, you have a level of passion for, because you have to have a combination of skill, commitment, and efficient action. And the only way you're going to get that is if you're in a field that you're passionate about, that gets you excited, that does not feel like work, that you're in some type of in alignment with purpose. That's what it's ultimately about when we're talking about being a high performer. So you don't have to like beg LeBron James to shoot the basketball. You don't have to beg Venus and Serena to like play tennis. This is what they do because they're in alignment. Yeah, Anthony, I'm feeling good tonight. As you can tell, I'm back. I'm not sick or anything. So listen, we in mode, right? This is my get back for last week. So again, skill, commitment, efficient action. When you're in your purpose lane, your lane of purpose, your field of favor, when you're in that, it's easy for you to commit yourself to the skill, commit yourself to the efficient action, and commit yourself to all of the necessary particulars that are needed to excel in that field. So let's talk about the skill for a little second. So what you want to write down is this: natural talent is God-given. Gifts are God-given. They don't require any skill. They do require refinements, but natural talent and gifts are God-given. Skills, on the other hand, can be developed, and they're developed through experience. So natural talent, God-given. Gifts, God-given. A gift is something that you got, but you didn't have to pay anything for it. Skills, on the other hand, can be developed through experience. So let's take me for an example. I don't have a natural talent to speak. Like my mom, she gets on these calls often. My mom has been getting on my calls, since 2017, since I started, or 16, since I started doing calls similar to this. And my mom will be so blown away at my ability to speak because I'm a natural introvert. My natural state is introvert, don't talk, gotta beg me to speak. If I'm in the same room with you, I probably won't even speak first. Well, probably will now because I've kind of grown. I no longer identify as an introvert, if that makes any sense. But my innate nature is introvertedness. But over time, through me speaking, through me communicating, I have developed the skill of speaking and communicating effectively and putting words together and making very in-depth things seem very easy to understand. That, my friends, is a skill. That's not a natural gift to do that. It's not a natural talent for me to do this. My wife has to beg me to communicate sometimes. But what I'm doing now, I'm in alignment with my purpose. So I was willing to dedicate the time that was needed to learn how to communicate effectively by reading out loud, saying presentations over and over and over again, and ultimately speaking. See, Steph Curry only became really good at shooting the basketball by shooting the basketball. So you only get good at something by putting the work in. You only develop a skill through time and experience. Does that make sense? So the benefit of developing the skill, though, is this: skills get you access. Please pay attention and pick up what I'm putting down. Skills get you access. Let's take my favorite hero in the Bible outside of Jesus for an example, King David. Before King David was King David, he was just a kid named David who was left in the field in the wilderness by his father. When Samuel came to anoint the next king, he wasn't even invited to the party. 7 other brothers was there. David was not there. Samuel comes to anoint David to be king. But before David becomes king, he was anointed, then he went through a season of being disappointed because he was anointed to be king as a teenager, 13, 14, 15 years old, but he didn't become a king until he was 30. So it was a bunch of time between him becoming king. But how did David get access to the kingdom before he became the king? It was because David had spent time in the field developing a skill of playing a stringed instrument known as a harp. And when God saw a problem crazy in the head, go read it in 1 Samuel, chapter, I don't want to guess, but somewhere in 1 Samuel. God saw a problem where he's messed up in the brain, can't think straight, and he needed somebody to play a harp to just soothe him. Well, David was the best harp player around because he had spent so much time developing this skill before there was demand for his skill. So my question for you is, how much time do you spend developing a skill before there's a demand for your skill? Because when the demand for David's skill, when people began to draw on his skill and began to demand his skill, he had already refined his skill. So when it was time for him to show up to the palace, anointed to be king, but he's in the position of a servant, he was able to play the harp fluently, effortlessly. And his ability to play the harp fluently and effortlessly is what got him access to the kingdom before he was the king. So skills get you access, but skills also give you influence. Skills get you access. Let me just pause for the calls real quick, get a little bit of water. I know the microphone is starting to heat up a little bit. Your hands are starting to write now. You're starting to realize that the boy is back. He feels a lot good. He feels a lot better tonight. So skills get you access, but skills also give you influence. So let's stay on beat with David for a second. So David got access to the palace because of his skill of playing the harp. But his skill of playing the harp didn't give him real influence. His real influence came by way of another skill that he also had developed in his season of hiding, in his season of being in the wilderness. And it was this skill of being able to shoot a slingshot or shoot a slingshot better than anybody could shoot a slingshot. And he didn't need anything but a little rubber band or whatever the sling was made of. Probably not a rubber band, probably like a little leather, something, whatever it was, and a rock. And I can imagine David in the field as a shepherd, herding the sheep, playing the harp, and also spinning his rock on his slingshot because he knew that, or maybe he knew that one day there will be a demand for this skill. And so when another problem rose up, do you see how your skills should solve problems for other people? This is why there's such a benefit of developing the skill. Because you getting good at something solves a problem for somebody else. But if you don't get good at nothing, you can't solve a problem for anybody else. And if you can't solve a problem for anybody else, you can't make any profit because profit is on the other side of problem solving. Does that make sense? So skills get you access, but skills also give you influence. When the Israelites had a problem, the Israelite army had a problem, there was a problem named Goliath. And nobody could solve this problem. But David had been refining his skill in the wilderness when nobody was watching, when nobody was looking, when nobody was checking for David. He was sharpening the axe, refining the skill. And as a teenager, he knocked out a 9-foot giant that had said he'd been a warrior since he was a kid. David hadn't been in any battles with any humans, but he did slay a lion and a tiger, or a lion and a bear. But he had never been in a battle that the Bible describes with any humans. And his first battle with the human was a 9-foot giant named Goliath. And because he had spent time developing the skill of the slingshot, he knocked him out in one blow. And after that, he went on to become the top lieutenant, this top military guy in the Israelite army. And the women of the town wrote a song and said, Saul killed thousands, but David killed tens of thousands. David immediately had influence. Why? Because he spent time developing a skill. So skills get you access, skills give you influence, but skills also pay the bills. Because don't get it twisted, don't forget, or maybe you don't know, but after slaying Goliath, David got a little bit of money too, and he got a wife. And he didn't have to pay any taxes. Wish my skills didn't allow me to pay taxes. So skills get you access, skills get you influence, give you influence, but skills also pay the bills. This is why it's so important when we're talking about being a high performer. Remember, a high performer is an individual who consistently achieves exceptional results in their chosen field, their field of favor, through a combination of skill, commitment, and efficient action. So, what's the proof of high performance? Well, the proof of being a high performer is found in your production. See, talking about David was a producer. See, he learned the skill of combat and became the top general in this army and killed thousands of soldiers because of his skill. You take any great athlete, any great entrepreneur, they're not just a high performer because they call themselves a high performer. They're a high performer because their results speak to them being a high performer. So the proof of being a high performer is found in your production, but the prerequisite to production is intention. The prerequisite to production, my friend, is intention. And it's intentionality that shapes your reality. Mhm, 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 mhm. See, a common denominator in all high performers is that they focus on intention and they ignore distraction. The proof of high performance is found in your production. The prerequisite to production is intention. Intentionality is what shapes your reality. The common denominator in all high performers is that they focus on intention and they ignore the distractions. See, intention is what moves the needle in your favor. Distraction moves the needle away from your favor. Does that make sense? So, focus is so important to your success and so paramount to you being profitable because focus is the superpower of successful individuals. Focus is the superpower of successful individuals. What focus is ultimately is selective attention. I see this, but I choose to focus here. I used to believe, and I even said this on calls before, that the number one cause of failure is broken focus. And that's partially correct. But I've learned that focus is not necessarily ever broken because you're always focusing on something. So focus isn't broken, but focus is oftentimes traded. You trade your focus for something else. So I would like to submit to you that distraction can be focus and focus can also be distraction because if you're focusing on a distraction, that's what you're focused on. So focus is there, but you've traded your focus for the distraction. So you're focusing on something, you're still focusing, but you're focusing on the distraction. So focus is not necessarily broken, but it's traded. And so you as a high performer or a high performer in training, it's all about you deciding what is going to have your focus. Are you going to focus on intention? Are you going to focus on distraction? Are you going to focus on what moves the needle in your favor? Or are you going to focus on what pushes you off pivot? Because everybody's going to have um, everybody has the opportunity to choose what they're focused on. One of the greatest gifts that God gave us is the ability to choose. And we have the ability to choose where we put our attention. Hmm. Hmm. See, whatever you give attention to, you give increase to. Mhm. Whatever you give attention to, you give increase to. So, what has your attention? Mhm. See, we're only limited by two things: weakness of attention. We don't have the ability to focus for extended periods of time. Focus is a superpower of successful people. We're limited by the weakness of our attention and also the poverty of our imagination. But don't worry, we're going to get to the imagination piece. So, man's limits is weakness of attention because we don't know how to focus, or many people don't know how to focus on what needs to be focused on. And they put their focus on inferior things so they can never have the superior thing. So the common denominator in high performance is that they focus on intention and they ignore distraction. All of this is important because, again, the proof of a high performer is found in production, but the prerequisite to production is intention because it's intentionality that shapes my reality. But many people focus on distraction instead of focusing on intention. So because they don't focus on intention, they can't produce how they should produce in their chosen field a favor. Does that make sense? Drop some fire in the chat box and let me know if this is making sense so far. Turn me up, turn me up, turn me up. Give me some energy. Just let me know. Let me know if you're picking up what I'm putting down. Okay, 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 okay. Let's get it. So let's go back to our definition for tonight. A high performer is an individual who consistently achieves exceptional results in their chosen field through a combination of skill and commitment and efficient action. What's commitment? Commitment is staying true to what you said you were gonna do long after the feeling of the or the mood that you have set it in has left your body. Commitment is staying true to what you said you were gonna do long after the feeling or the mood that you set it in has left your body. Because you do recognize that when you get an emotional charge for something, you say things because of how you feel. And sometimes you can say things because you just feel so good about something, like maybe you're at an event, or maybe you just watched a video, or maybe you're on a call like this and you heard something went inside your body and it caused you to say something in the moment. But 4 days later, you're no longer committed to that thing that you said. Maybe because you no longer have the feeling. But here's what you need to understand about commitment. Commitment does not rely on your emotions. Commitment is not reliant on your emotions. But you want to know what many people do? Many people allow their commitment to bow down to their emotions. You want to know why people don't do stuff that they know they're supposed to do? One simple reason. There's a bunch of reasons, but the core reason, the foundational reason why people do not do what they said they were going to do is simply because they don't feel like it. It's the only reason. Think about some of this, like, let's use my wife for an example. Folding clothes. I just don't feel like it. I just don't feel like it. Just don't feel like it. But she said she's going to fold the clothes. Somebody going to the gym. Yeah, I don't really feel like going to the gym today. So they don't go to the gym today. But when you make, somebody said not fold the clothes. Yeah, but when you make the commitment to do something, it's not based on the feeling. Does that make sense? Because commitment is not reliant on your emotions. So you can never allow your commitment to bow down to your emotions. But how do you alleviate that? How do you ensure that your commitment never bows down to your emotions? Is based on, pay attention, the story that you tell yourself. You have to tell yourself better stories. You have to tell yourself better stories. Because when you tell yourself better stories, it does something to your mind. Like, think about it for a second. Let's take going to the gym for an example, because that's something that we all can pretty much relate to. Um, I don't like working out all the time. I do it because, I tell myself a story in my mind. And sometimes the story don't even work. I still miss the day. I'm just being honest. But anyway, you have to tell yourself better stories. So think about the gym. I don't really feel like going to the gym today. I don't really feel like doing this today. But when you tell yourself a story like, if I don't go to the gym today, I'm not gonna like how my body looks in the summer when I try to go on this vacation. And if I don't go to the gym today, I'm gonna eat more than I actually would have, because I may be eating at the time I should have been at the gym on the treadmill or doing bench press or something like that. And so over time, if I keep doing this, these calories start to stack up and this weight starts to stack up and the six pack just disappears, or it never shows, or is hidden behind all this fat. So that's a simple story, but you get the point of what I'm saying. You have to tell yourself a story that makes you stay committed to the commitments. Because a high performer, a high performer is somebody that, again, focuses on the skill, the commitments, and the efficient action. And again, the commitment is not reliant on your emotions. But the reason why most people never stay committed is because they don't tell themselves the proper story. So, what are three vital commitments that you must make? Are you ready? Because I'm about to tell you. So, the first one is the commitment to skill development. This is the commitment that you have to make. You have to make the commitment to get really, really good at what you do. You've kind of talked about this already, but you have to make that commitment to say, man, come hell or high water, I am going to refine my skill. I'm going to sharpen my sword, because the life that I desire is based on, or it's on the other side of me getting really good at what I do. Because skills is what give me access, skills give me influence, and skills ultimately pay the bills in any industry. So you have to make the commitment to skill development. You also must make the commitment to personal development, which is why you're on this call tonight. And I'm sure that you hop on other calls and watch YouTube videos and read books and all that stuff. All that stuff is so vitally important, because this call is not about influence, but I will throw this in there. Skills plus growth is what equals influence. Skills plus growth. When you're really good at something and you're developed personally, you're mature, you got influence. This is what it is. You look across the board at anybody, you find somebody that's really good and they have the right heart, right character, the right mental, that person has influence. So you got to make the commitment to skill development, make the commitment to personal development, and you also have to make the commitment to continuity. Yeah. Commitment to continuity produces emotional stability. Don't worry, I'm gonna run it back for you. Commitment to continuity produces emotional stability. Riyadh, you be talking a lot. What does that mean? When you have made the commitment to just continue without reward, because you're in it for the process and not solely the prize, your emotions are in check because you're committed to the journey, not the destination. Does that make sense? So, commitment to continuity is what produces emotional stability. When I make the commitment to just continue, when I make the commitment to just refine my skill and just get better and better and gooder and gooder. I know it's not a word. I just wanted to use it. So making the commitment to continuity, getting better and better and gooder and gooder, greater and greater. I don't care so much about the result because I'm committed to the process. I'm committed to the resolve. The result will always show up. This is what keeps my emotions in check when I'm enduring the process of becoming a high performer and becoming a person of value and becoming great and being a value add to the marketplace and being a value add to the kingdom of God. I'm committed to continuity. I'm committed to continuing the journey as long as God has me here. That's the commitment that you must make. The fourth commitment that you have to make is the commitment to your future self. Whoa, wait a minute. You have to make the commitments to your future self. Mhm. Your future self will suffer if you don't make these commitments today. Because what's guaranteed is that the future is always going to be here. It's guaranteed. Time is always moving, time will never cease. So you have to make this commitment to your future self, like the future me 5 years from now. I'm committed to that person. The future me 1 year from now, 18 months from now, I'm committed to that person. And the lifestyle that the future me lives is based on what the current me is doing today. Does that make sense? So you have to make the commitment to skill development. You got to make the commitment to personal development. You got to make the commitment to continuity. And you must make the commitment to your future self. And we're talking about being a high performer, because the high life, the life that you desire, is reserved for high performers. And if you were under a rock, not paying attention, maybe jumped on the call a little bit late. What is a high performer? A high performer is an individual who consistently achieves exceptional results in their chosen field through a combination of skill, commitment, and efficient action. What is efficient action? Isn't all action the same? No. See, it's not the number of things that you do, but the efficiency of each action. That is what matters. It's never the number of things. It's about how you do it. In the book Science of Getting Rich, it talks about doing things in a certain way. I believe it's chapter 13, efficient action. It talks about doing things in a certain way. See, every inefficient act is a failure. And if you spend your life doing inefficient acts, then your life will be a failure. Every efficient act is a success. And if you spend your life doing efficient acts, then your life will be a success. Every action that you take is a vote for the person that you see yourself to be. So when we're talking about doing things efficiently, it's not the number of things that you do, but it's about how you do the things. It's about doing them in a certain way. Many of you guys know that I am an athlete. Some would say former athlete, but me, I still identify as an athlete. And that's the story that I tell myself to make me go work out. Bro, you're an athlete. You gotta work out. This is what athletes do. But anyway, in my time of playing sports, when I was playing at the University of Tennessee, I had this coach named Coach Martinez. And Coach Martinez would always tell me about some of the bad habits that I would have when I was like in my doing my deal. I played cornerback. For those that know what a cornerback is, I played cornerback. And so I had this bad habit of like dropping my hands and spreading my feet when I'm doing my press man drills. And he would always tell me that. And I would practice it to like try to improve it. But I just had this really bad habit of doing that. All right. And this habit that I had developed of doing that, it had started 2 years before I even got to Tennessee. I had been doing this my whole time in college. And so when I finally get to Tennessee, I'm trying to break this habit of doing something that I had been doing for so long. I was really good. I was getting really good results doing it how I was doing it, but it wasn't efficient. It was causing me to be a little bit like not react properly, but it was an inefficient act. And when you do things over time inefficiently, the gap begins to spread when you're comparing yourself or you're in the same field or the same industry with people that are doing things efficiently. And this is why you have to focus on moving efficiently, practicing efficiently, acting efficiently, and making everything that you do efficiently. Being efficient and effective is what makes a person exceptional. Being efficient and effective is what makes a person exceptional. And when you're efficient, effectiveness is almost a byproduct. Does that make sense? So we just covered each component of a high performer: skill, commitment, and efficient action. I hope you're paying attention. Because now what I want to dive into to wrap up the call here are the traits of the high performers. Because you better believe every high performer, no matter the industry, displays these 4 traits. There are more traits, but these 4, I believe, are relevant in the life of all high performers. And so the first component or the first trait of high performers is their habits. A habit is a behavior that has been repeated enough times to become automatic. That's what a habit is. It's a habit or it's a behavior that's been repeated enough times to the point that it becomes automatic. It does not take any conscious effort. It is a subconscious activity. You've done it over and over and over and over again. So, but when we think about habits, your habits, they're a reflection of your identity. See, what you do on a repetitive basis is an indication of the type of person that you believe that you are. So I just alluded to me being an athlete. which is why I still work out like an athlete because I still identify myself to be an athlete, even though I no longer play sports anymore. I still feel that I'm an athlete. My toxic trait is that I still feel I can get out there and play on Sundays. No, I can't. But I still internally believe that if I trained, I can get out there and play, right? So your habits, they're a reflection of your identity. And what you do on a repetitive basis is an indication of the type of person that you believe that you are. So true behavior change or true habit change must first start with identity change because any habits or any behavior that's not congruent with your identity is a habit that will not last. This is why every time you try to eat healthy, it don't last. This is why every time you try to work out, it doesn't last. This is why every time you try to excel in whatever your field of entrepreneurship is, whatever you're doing, you try to develop the habits that are needed to do it, it doesn't last. Because identity change is the North Star of habit change. If you don't change your underlying views about how you see yourself and the type of person that you believe that you are, any habit that you try to set, any habit that you try to engage in, it won't stick. It won't stick. It's going to be a very, very short lived habit because any behavior that's not incongruent with how you see yourself is a habit that will not last. Because behind every single habit, behind every activity is a system of beliefs. So while we're here, there's a book called Atomic Habits. You should read it. It's one of my favorite books. It's actually the best book on habits I've read. I read like five on habits. Atomic Habits, creme de la creme, top tier. So when we're talking about being a high performers have developed these habits in their life. They develop the habits that are necessary in their particular field of favor, what they're supposed to be doing, and they display these habits on a consistent basis. They don't allow anything to knock them off of their pivot when it comes to their habits. And the reason why that is so is because of the underlying beliefs that they have about themselves. Because if you try to create a new habit, but you have not changed how you see yourself and your identity, then that habit will not last. Be, do, have. Be first, then you do, and then you can have. We're human beings, not human doings. So, in order for you to do accurately and do in alignment or the habits that you would like to do, it first starts with the identity and the person that you are becoming. Because when you have became more, you can naturally do more. When you identify yourself as a high performer, you start saying, I'm a high performer. What do high performers do? How do high performers live? What do high performers eat? Where do high performers go to stimulate their mind? What type of books do high performers read? What type of associations do high performers have? What type of stuff do they spend time watching on YouTube? How many mentors do they have? Do they have mentors? Right? You start asking yourself these questions, and then you start identifying yourself with that, and then you start doing what high performers do because there's something called a habit loop, which means your identity creates your habits, and your habits create your identity. Mhm. Because habits or identity is another definition for identity would be repeated beingness. Repeated beingness. So the more that you do a thing, the more you identify with a thing. So the more you work out, the more you identify yourself as a person who works out. So it's not, how can I put this? What's better? Just reading a book or identifying yourself as a reader? Identify yourself as a reader because when you identify as a reader, you read books. When you identify yourself as an athlete, you naturally do what athletes do. So you just go to the gym and you train. When you identify yourself as a high performer, you naturally do what high performers do. And the more that you do it, the more that this identity of that is cemented because you have evidence of that. See, everything, please listen to this. Everything that you believe about yourself currently, you only believe it because you have evidence of it. That's the only reason you believe it, because there's evidence of it. So you have to get more evidence for the thing that you want to identify with. So when we're talking about being a high performer, you have to identify as a high performer and start doing what high performers do. And over time, this loop just gets repeated. You're identifying as it, and you're doing what high performers do. So now you're submitting the identity of being a high performer because you have evidence of it. So high performers, the first trait are their habits. The second one is their imagination. This is where it gets really good. Because remember, man's biggest limitation is an undeveloped imagination, poverty of imagination. We're only limited by weakness of our attention, our focus, and the poverty of our imagination. Do you want to know how powerful the imagination is? Let me let you in on something. So I believe it's Genesis 11. In Genesis 11, there was this group of people that believed, that imagined that they could build a tower to heaven. They wanted to go to heaven and see what it looked like. And because they imagined it, they went to work on it and they started building this tower. And God looked down from heaven and said, man, they really trying to build a tower. Then he said this, go read it for yourself. Nothing will be restrained from them that which they have imagined to do. Nothing will be restrained from them that which they have imagined to do. Building a tower to heaven is impossible. Literally. But God says nothing will be restrained from them because of their imagination. And then he says, you know what? I'm going to have to confuse them. And so he comes down from heaven and he confuses them by affecting their language. And this is how we have different languages. He touched their mouths and in the language, everybody starts to speak in different languages. But you know what he didn't touch? You know what he left untouched? Their imagination. Because it's in our imagination where we're most like God. And this is why you cannot make the mistake and believe that what you see with the eyes of your head is more real than what you see with the eyes of your hearts. Your real life lies in your imagination. You have to put your imagination in drive. Many people have their imaginations in neutral and they don't control the thought energy that flows to their mind. So they allow their mind to be infiltrated with so many thoughts and they begin to think on these thoughts and ink. They begin to ink the thought on the canvas of their imagination, creating a movie in their mind that they begin to watch over and over, which creates this internal feeling. And this movie is also a story. And this story, wow, creates a feeling. And this feeling could be fear. This feeling could be anxiety. This feeling could be worry. But with that same imagination, if you put it in drive, that same imagination can create a feeling known as anticipation, expecting a desired outcome. So you have to put your imagination in drive and control the thought energy that flows through your mind. One philosopher will put it like this: you can't stop a bird from landing on your head, but you can stop the bird from building a nest. Meaning, you can't control the thoughts that you have, but you can control the thoughts that you choose to think about. You have the ability to reject or accept any thought that comes to your mind. And if you accept a thought and you begin to think about the thought. You're creating an image or a movie or a story on the canvas of your imagination. And if the story is incorrect, if the story is inaccurate, then your life will be inaccurate. Your life will not be in alignment with how the Father has designed and orchestrated for you to live. All because you have not controlled the thought energy that's flowed through your mind. The greatest gift, may I add, that God has given you. You want to know why people don't value the mind? I believe, and not even I believe, I heard this from Earl Nightingale. He said the reason why people don't value the mind is because they didn't have to pay anything for it. It was standard equipment at birth, and we only put value on things that we pay for. But because the mind was free, it came with us at birth. We didn't have to do anything for it. We don't value it as we should. We don't treat the imagination as we should. It's in your imagination where you can birth anything. It's the birth canal of anything that you desire. It's where God plants dreams and puts visions. But we have so many thoughts. The human brain thinks, or the human mind thinks 60,000 thoughts a day. A lot of those thoughts are negative. A lot of those thoughts are repetitive. And so, because there's so much thought energy going through our mind, we have to be able to control what we're thinking about. But many people don't do that. Many people don't do that. Many people don't know how to think about the future and allow the future to determine how they act in the present. They instead take the present and use that to determine their future, which is a very big mistake. That, oh my God, that is a mistake. That is such a mistake. It's such a mistake to look at your life today, look at your current situation, look at your current bank account, look at your resources, look at who's in your network, and then base your future on that. That's scary. Oh, shucks. That's bad. Looking at your life today as it is, and then saying, okay, this is where I can be a year from now. This is where I can be 5 years from now. That is a mistake. Instead, what you should do is look at a year from now, look at 5 years from now, create design, ask God to paint in your mind what that looks like, and then you work backwards today to get there, to bring that into reality by faith. But you know why many people don't do that? Many people don't do that because they lack imagination. They have not learned how to use their imagination muscles. And so, because of that, again, what did he say? Man's biggest limitation is an undeveloped imagination. We're only limited by weakness of our attention and poverty of our imagination. So, if I can use my imagination to think about what life looks like a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and see it clearly, and then I do the work today, because again, remember the commitment that we must make. We must make the commitment to our future self. But if our imagination is impoverished, then we can't make the commitment to our future self because we don't know what our future self even looks like. A little water right quick, let me let the mic breathe. So don't use your imagination or don't use your present state to think ahead. You use your future state. You think about the future. You have to real deal sit down and think about the future, your future self, your future reality, and use that to do the work today. Your imagination must be renewed, your mind must be renewed, and it must be in alignment with the word of God. This is how you ensure that your success becomes a reality. When your mind is renewed and it's in alignment with the word of God, because now that becomes a filter for what you see in your imagination. Because don't get it twisted, everything that you see here is not for you. Because somebody else got access to your mind too. Yeah, see, it's not just you and God that has access to your mind. You know that, right? You do know that it was Satan that went into the heart, the subconscious mind of Judas and said, betray Jesus. That wasn't even Judas's thoughts. Yeah, go read it in Matthew. But the enemy is so slick, he's so subtle. He have you thinking that his thoughts are your thoughts. And this is why your imagination, your mind must be renewed. And it must be in alignment with the word of God, because he'll have you chasing things that God will give you. Whoa. Imagine chasing something that God just wants to freely give you. Yeah, you can't chase what God wants to freely give, because chasing leads to burnouts. Chasing leads to burnouts. Chasing makes you tired. And imagine God, like, bro, you ain't got to do all that. Yeah, you got to work, but you don't got to chase. Yeah, you got to work, but you don't got to stress. But you want to know what the most important work is? You believing. That's the most important work. You just believing. But you want to know why people can't believe how they need to believe? Because believing requires your imagination. And many people's imagination is weak. So, habits, imagination. What else do high performers, or whatever, what other trait do they have? High performers set worthy goals. High performers set worthy goals. Now, here's what I would like to mention to you about goals. The biggest problem with goals is that lower achievers set goals and higher achievers set goals. Most goals that get set don't get hits. That's just the fact of the matter. So, what are goals actually for? If there's a chance that I'm not going to hit all the goals that I set, what are they for? Do we want to hit our goals? Of course, but what are they for mainly? Goals are for you to stretch your imagination, stretch your thought process, and they force you to grow. That's what goals are for. Because the other interesting thing about goals is that many people, when they set goals, they put a date on the goals. And I think that that is actually not the best thing that you can do. I'm gonna just be honest. You wanna know why? Two things. First thing, God don't care about your date. To speak very bluntly. Doesn't care about your dates. He doesn't live in time. Who you are at your core, at your essence, your spirit man, that person doesn't even live in time. That your spirit doesn't know that time is doesn't your spirit has always been here. Your spirit has been here since eternity. But when your parents did the do, God sent you into time from eternity. But your spirit does not know time. So when you set goals with deadlines, you're actually putting a bit more stress on yourself than you should. Because many people, when the date comes and the goal hasn't become a reality, sometimes they think lower of themselves. Sometimes they think that they're not worthy. Sometimes they think that they're not good enough. Sometimes they think they just stress about the dates, but you shouldn't care so much about the date. What you should really care about is the system for goal attainment and goal achievement. That's what matters more than the dates. Because if you do everything that's required of you, then the goal is going to happen. Let's take a sports team. Sports teams start the season, say, man, we want to win a championship. But they don't talk about the championship all throughout the season. They just only focus on what it takes to win the championship. They're committed to continuity. Commitment, you got to pay attention. It all comes together. Commitment to continuity produces emotional stability. So, yeah, I set the goal. Yeah, I want the goal. And yeah, I would like for the goal to happen in my time. But the real me does not live in time. God don't care about time. So I ain't tripping about the time. It's going to happen when it happens. I'm setting the goal because the goal is going to force me to stretch. It's going to stretch my imagination. It's going to stretch my thought process. It's going to stretch my belief. And this is why high performers set worthy goals. Am I telling you to not put a date on your goal? No, do what you want to do. I'm telling you that I no longer care about dates. I just trust God is going to happen when it's supposed to happen in the divine time. That's just what it is. And that, listen, that gave me so much peace. I don't even think you understand. I ain't tripping about nothing. Because when you set dates and timelines, it forces you to rush. But goals are important because goals bring measurement to the vision. See, that's what I care about more than the goal. I care about the overall vision of something, of the thing. And these goals, these are just checkpoints to ensure that I get to the vision. But the vision comes at an appointed time. I don't control that time. It says in Proverbs that we roll the dice, God determines how they fall. We roll the dice, God determines how they fall. He determines if it's a 7 or 11. He determines that. I don't determine that. I just roll the dice. We sow the seed, God sends the rain, God sends the increase. That's what we do. So instead of putting so much focus on the goal itself, put more focus on the system because you don't rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your systems. So you want to have a system for goal achievement. And that's based on whatever goal you're trying to achieve. I can't give you that. But the system is more important than the goal itself because if you focus on the goal, the system of the goal, then the goal is going to happen in its own time. It's our job to provide the faith. It's God's job to provide the favor. God provides the favor. We provide the faith. And it's faith in the invisible that produces the incredible. So I ain't tripping about nothing because it's not goals that ensure success. Goals don't ensure your success. God ensures your success. Does that make sense? Drop some fire in the chat if that makes sense. I know that kind of maybe messed up your philosophy a little bit about goals, but I'm just trying to keep it G with you. Listen, I just don't want you to be stressed about your goals. That's it. I want you to have a level of peace about your goals like I have a level of peace about my goals. Because I'm focused on the system of goal achievement, not the goal itself. If I work the system of goal achievement, then the goal happens in its own divine time. I roll the dice. God determines how they fall. So habits, imagination, worthy goals, but having a system for goal achievement, that's the most important part because we don't rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the level of our systems. So what's the final piece? Humility. 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 Humility is the final piece to you being a high performer and having the life that you desire. So before we talk about what humility actually is, can we first talk about what humility is not? Humility is not low self-esteem. Man, it is 10:08. I'm so sorry. Am I okay on time? Are y'all good? I listen, I'm almost done. I promise. I try to be super courteous and conscious of the time. So just let me know if we good. Because I want to be respectful. So, humility. Thank y'all. Don't downplay humility because you're ignorant to the power of humility, first off. Somebody said no timeline, remember? I hear you. Okay. You use the me on me. So don't downplay humility because you're ignorant to the power of humility. And many people downplay humility, meaning they say stuff like, man, I ain't being humble. I'm gonna be me. I'm him. I ain't humble, blah, blah, blah. Y'all heard you heard on Instagram stuff about humility and being humble and all that kind of stuff. That's trash. That's trash. Many people downplay humility because they don't know the power of humility and they don't know what humility actually is. So before we talk about what humility is, let's first talk about what humility is not. Humility is not low self-esteem. Many people have you believe that humility is low self-esteem, like you think lowly of yourself. Oh, he's just so humble, you know. No, that's not humility. Humility is not a lack of self-awareness. Humility is not a lack of self-awareness. Humility is not an unwillingness to speak one's mind or speak about their accomplishments. See, people have you believe that a person that doesn't talk about themselves, their goals, that means they're humble. No, that person can be full of pride. They just may be quiet. So just because somebody don't speak about what they've done, what they've achieved, or who they are, that does not mean that they're humble. I said this before, and I'll say it again. Jesus was humble of them all. He had more humility than anybody. But a lot of the things that we know about the Son of God, he told us himself. He is the one that said, drink from me the living water. I'm living water. He's the one that said, I am the bread of life. You eat from me, you'll never have to eat again. What does that even mean? Right? He said that. He's the one that said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no man can come to God except through me. Do you recognize the power and the magnitude of that statement? Do you also recognize that no other what's the word, like leader of their faith, like nobody in the Muslim religion ever said that, nobody in the Buddhism culture ever said that, nobody in any other religion has ever said that I am the only way that you can get to God? Do you really understand the power of that statement? What he's saying is that if you're Muslim and you're talking to Allah, you're not even talking to Allah because you can't get to God except through me, Jesus Christ. He said that himself. He said that. So humility is not an unwillingness to speak one mind about who I am. That's not, it wasn't prideful for Jesus to say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's just self-aware. He's just recognizes the power of his identity. That's just what it is. So these were his words. These are the words that are written in red. So what is humility? Humility is a modest view of one's importance that leads to an unending appreciation and commitment. There's that word again, to never leave the posture of a student. Humility, a modest view of one's importance. Modest view, not a low view, but a modest view that leads to an unending appreciation and commitment to never leave the posture of a student. See, it's humility that allows you to learn. It's some humility that allow you to sit down and listen to somebody and take in information. and not listen to respond, but listen to understand, listen to take in. Humility allows you to be teachable and coachable. Watch this. Humility is the faucet that favor flows from. See, this is what people don't understand about humility. And this is why they say stuff like, I ain't being humble. This is my year. I'm going to pop my stuff, because they don't understand that it's humility that is the faucet that favors flows from. See, God is far from the proud, but he gives favor to the humble. Mhm. He's far from the proud, but he gives favor to the humble. So when we're talking about being a high performer and exercising the traits of being a high performer, humility is so vitally important to that. It was humility that allowed Michael Jordan to win 6 championships. See, Michael Jordan couldn't win championships until a new coach came in by the name of Phil Jackson. And Phil Jackson had a new playbook, had a new offense called the triangle offense, for those that don't know. And Michael Jordan had to submit and commit himself to have the posture of a student and be humble and listen to this new coach that was bringing in this foreign offense that nobody else was running. Humility. It was humility that allowed David to never forfeit himself from the kingdom, because he was still able to look at Saul, even when Saul was trying to kill him. And David had the opportunity to kill Saul, and he didn't, because he still recognized Saul as God's anointed one. That's favor. I mean, that's humility. That's humility. So humility is what's going to allow you to learn. Humility is the faucet that favors flows from, and God gives favor to the humble. So when you're in your field of favor, when you're in your purpose lane, and you're looking to be a high performer in that lane, there are traits that you must bring to the table. Habits is one, the right habits that are conducive to you creating the success that you desire, using your imagination to control the thought energy, paint new pictures and new realities on your mind, and bring them to reality, setting worthy goals, but not so much caring about the date or of the goal, but having a system for goal achievement, and then being humble in the process, submitting yourself to mentorship, learning the books and reading and learning from mentors to help you, and being teachable and coachable. That is what allows people to become high performers. Man, I hope y'all got value tonight, because that is a wrap. That is a wrap. So what I'll do real quick before we wrap it up is I'll open the line up real quick. I couldn't do this last week because I was literally dying, so I couldn't even get no feedback from y'all. But tonight, I'm gonna open it up real quick, and I just love to hear from maybe 2 or 3 people. Just share with me something that stood out to you tonight, something that you got value from, or just a thought that you had throughout the call. If there's a question that you got, I can help you with. Please shoot. I believe that you guys have the ability to unmute yourself.